A shocking start. Wait a minute, that's not my face. That was the first coherent thought that broke through the fog in my brain. I was standing in front of my bathroom mirror, the fluorescent light humming a flat, annoying tune above me. The face staring back wasn't Liam's. Not really. The bone structure was mine. Sure, the same jawline, the same nose. But everything else was different. The skin was smoother, the lines around my eyes softer, my lips seemed fuller, and my hair, which should have been short and messy, was a cascade of soft brown waves that fell past my shoulders. I reached up a trembling hand, my fingers brushing against a cheek that felt impossibly soft. It was my hand, but it looked more slender, the nails neatly shaped. This wasn't a dream. I could feel the cold tile under my bare feet, the soft fabric of a satin nightgown against my skin. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, a rhythm of pure, unadulterated panic. Who was this girl in the mirror, and where in the world was Liam? To answer that, I have to go back to a broken laptop, a hidden file, and the girl who changed everything. The secret in apartment 302. My name is Liam. I'm 21 years old, a design student at Northwood University, or at least, that's who I was, on the outside. I was just another quiet, introverted guy. I kept to myself, spent most of my time sketching in notebooks or working on digital projects, and generally tried to be as invisible as possible. The life of a design student is a hectic one, filled with deadlines, critiques, and the constant pressure to be creative on demand. I was good at it, but it was a drain. My apartment, number 302, was my sanctuary. It was small and a little cluttered with art supplies and textbooks, but it was mine. It was the only place I could be myself. And it was the only place I kept my biggest secret. It wasn't something I ever planned on. It started subtly. I'd be sketching fashion concepts for a class, and my pencil would just drift. Instead of drawing men's streetwear or athletic apparel, I'd find myself sketching elegant dresses, flowing skirts, and delicate blouses. I loved the way the fabrics moved, the way they draped over the female form. It was just an artistic interest. I told myself nothing more. But then curiosity got the better of me. I started browsing online clothing stores, not for myself, but for the women's sections. I'd spend hours looking at silk camisoles, lace-trimmed lingerie, and high-waisted pencil skirts. The textures, the colors, the sheer variety of it all was intoxicating. It felt like a whole world of expression that was completely closed off to me. One night, on a whim fueled by loneliness and a bottle of cheap wine, I ordered a simple black satin slip dress. It arrived a few days later in a discreet package. I waited until long after the sun had set, until the entire apartment building had fallen silent. My hands were shaking as I unwrapped it. The fabric was even softer than I had imagined, cool and liquid in my hands. I stripped off my worn-out t-shirt and jeans and, with my heart pounding in my ears, I pulled the dress on. The sensation was electric. The cool satin slithered over my skin, clinging in some places and flowing in others. I stood in front of my full-length mirror and stared. The reflection was jarring a boy's frame draped in a woman's garment. It looked wrong, but it felt right. Right in a way I couldn't explain. It felt like coming home. That was the beginning. One dress turned into a small collection, a pair of stockings, a simple wig. I never wore them out. Of course, this was a private world, a secret self that only existed within the four walls of apartment 302. To keep it all organized, to keep it safe, I created a folder on my laptop, I encrypted it, password protected it, and buried it deep within my system files. I named it File 302. Inside that folder was everything. Photos of me, taken with a self-timer, awkwardly posing in a new skirt or a pair of heels, my own design sketches for women's clothing, things I would never dare show my professors, and a digital journal, a series of text files where I confess my deepest, most confusing thoughts. Entries like, I wish I could know what it feels like, just for one day, and the one that scared me the most. I think I want to try living as a girl, even if it's just once. File 302 was my soul, digitized and hidden away, and I never ever imagined anyone else would see it. Life, however, has a funny way of taking your carefully laid plans and throwing them into a blender. My laptop, my most prized possession, the vault that held my entire secret life, decided to die. 1 minute I was finishing a project render. The next, the screen flickered, spat out a series of horrifying digital artifacts, and went black. The blue screen of death. I tried everything rebooting, safe mode, praying to every tech god I could think of. Nothing. It was completely dead. Panic set in, cold and sharp. My project was on there, due in 3 days. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was file 302. The thought of a stranger, some random tech at a big box store, poking around my hard drive and finding it, it made me feel sick to my stomach. I needed someone I could trust, or at least, someone local, someone who wasn't part of some massive, faceless corporation. I remembered a small, hole-in-the-wall computer repair shop I passed every day on my way to campus. It was called Ivy's Tech and Trinkets, a quirky name for a quirky-looking place. The windows were filled with a strange mix of old computer parts and handcrafted jewelry. It seemed different. Maybe different was what I needed. The next morning, I clutched my dead laptop like a fallen comrade and pushed open the door to the shop. A little bell chimed. The air inside smelled of ozone, soldering flux, and something faintly floral, like jasmine. The place was even stranger on the inside. Shelves were crammed with circuit boards, tangled nests of cables, and antique computer monitors, but nestled among them were delicate silver necklaces and strange crystalline sculptures. And behind the counter, a girl was watching me. She looked to be about my age, maybe a year or two older. She had dark, choppy hair cut in a stylish bob, and her eyes were sharp, piercing. They were a deep, intelligent green, and they seemed to see right through my carefully constructed walls of anxiety. She wore a simple black tank top and cargo pants, her arms toned and smudged with what looked like silver polish. A mischievous, almost knowing smile played on her lips. "Laptop trouble?" she asked, her voice surprisingly smooth. I nodded, my own voice barely a squeak. "Yeah, it won't turn on. I have a huge project on it." "The great digital tragedy," she said, her smile widening. "Don't worry, you've come to the right place. I'm Ivy." I placed the laptop on the counter like a holy offering. "I'm Liam. Look, there's some personal stuff on there. Can you just, be careful with it?" Ivy raised an eyebrow, that sharp gaze of hers making me feel like I was completely transparent. "Liam, everyone who brings a computer in here says that. Everyone has their secrets. I'm just here to fix the machine, not to judge its ghost." Her words were meant to be reassuring, but they only made my stomach twist into a tighter knot. I left the shop feeling like I just handed over my diary to a psychic. For 2 days, I was a wreck. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I jumped every time my phone buzzed, expecting a call from Ivy. What if she'd found it? What would she say? Would she laugh? Would she be disgusted? The possibilities tormented me. On the 3rd day, the call finally came. "Liam, it's Ivy. Your laptop is ready." Well, the data is. The motherboard was fried, but I managed to pull everything off the hard drive. Relief washed over me, so potent it made me dizzy. The data was safe. The file was safe. Oh, thank God, I'll be right over. When I got to the shop, Ivy was waiting for me, that same enigmatic smile on her face. She held up an external hard drive. "It's all here, your project, your documents, your very detailed design portfolio." My blood ran cold. My design portfolio. "Yeah," she said, her eyes twinkling with something I couldn't read. She leaned against the counter, casual and composed, while my world was imploding, especially the stuff in the folder named File 302. The world stopped, the humming of the old computers, the ticking of a clock on the wall, the sound of my own breathing, it all just ceased to exist. All I could see were her sharp, green eyes. All I could hear was the name of my most protected secret, spoken aloud. I just stared at her, my mouth opening and closing like a fish. I couldn't form words. My mind was a blank slate of pure, unadulterated terror. She watched my meltdown with a patient sort of amusement. Then she tilted her head, her expression softening just a fraction. She lowered her voice, and what she said next shattered the last remnants of my composure. "So," she said, her tone gentle but direct, You're saying you want to become a real girl. My jaw snapped shut. A tidal wave of denial and panic crashed over me. Wait a minute, you read everything. My voice was a strangled whisper. I felt exposed, stripped bare under the fluorescent lights of her strange little shop. Ivy didn't flinch. She didn't laugh. She just looked at me, her gaze steady and serious. I had to make sure the data wasn't corrupted. Your journal entries were very passionate. It's not every day you read about a guy who knows the difference between a pencil skirt and an A-line. She pushed herself off the counter and took a step closer. The floral scent, jasmine, was stronger now. Look, I'm not here to judge you. Liam, I'm here because I found something interesting. Interesting, I croaked. You found my personal diary. I found a wish. She corrected me softly. A very powerful one. And I have a question for you. She paused, letting the weight of the moment settle between us. If you really want to try, I have a way. My brain struggled to catch up. A way? What did that mean? Who was this girl? Was she just a computer technician? Or was she something else entirely? Was this a prank? A cruel joke, but her eyes held no mockery. They held a possibility, a terrifying, exhilarating possibility. Before I could say anything, before I could run screaming out of the shop, she gestured toward the back room. Come on, let's just call this a consultation. Numbly, like a man in a dream, I followed her. The back room was part workshop, part something else I couldn't quite define. There were more tools and computer parts, but there was also a full-length 3-panel mirror, a professional-looking makeup vanity, and several clothing racks shrouded in white sheets. It felt like a backstage dressing room. Ivy turned to me, her expression all business now. All right, let's get your measurements. My what? She pulled out a soft tailor's tape measure without another word. Take off your hoodie. My mind was still reeling, but some part of me, the part that had written those secret journal entries, was screaming with a terrifying mix of fear and hope. I pulled off my hoodie. Standing there in my plain gray t-shirt, Ivy was quick and efficient, her touch light and impersonal as she measured my chest, my waist, my hips. She jotted the numbers down in a small notebook. Okay, she said, tapping the pen against her chin. I think I have just the thing to start with. She walked over to one of the covered racks and pulled back the sheet. It revealed a neatly organized collection of women's clothing. My eyes went wide. There were dresses, blouses, skirts of every color and style. It looked like a small, private boutique. Ivy scanned the rack, her fingers dancing over the fabrics, before pulling out a few items. This should work, she said, handing me a bundle of soft material. Go on, try it on. I looked down at the clothes in my hands. There was a cream-colored, form-fitting knit sweater, a dark green pleated skirt, and a pair of sheer nude pantyhose. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold them. In here, I stammered. Ivy just pointed to a small changing screen in the corner. Don't be shy. I've seen weirder things than a guy in a skirt. Every instinct told me to bolt, to grab my hard drive and run, to pretend this conversation never happened. But my feet felt rooted to the spot. The secret I had guarded so fiercely was already out. What was there left to lose? And a deeper, more insistent voice whispered from the place where File 302 was born. This is what you wanted. This is your chance. I walked behind the screen, my heart hammering against my ribs. I took off my jeans and shirt, my hands fumbling with the buttons and zippers. Then I picked up the pantyhose. I'd seen them in pictures, of course, but holding them was different. The material was impossibly fine, almost weightless. Getting them on was a clumsy, awkward struggle. I nearly ripped them twice, but once they were on, pulled up over my legs and settled at my waist. The sensation was bizarre. A smooth, silky second skin that made the hair on my legs disappear and created a strange, tingling awareness. Next was the skirt. It zipped up the side, the fabric crisp and cool. It settled perfectly on my hips, the pleats falling just above my knees. I took a hesitant step, and the fabric swished around my legs. The sound was so foreign, so feminine. Finally, the sweater. It was softer than any sweater I'd ever owned, and it hugged my torso, making my shoulders look narrower, my chest feel different. I took a deep breath. "You done in there," Ivy called out. I think so," I managed to say. "Come on out, we're not finished." Taking another shaky breath, I stepped out from behind the screen. I didn't dare look in the mirror yet. I kept my eyes fixed on Ivy. Her expression was unreadable, but she nodded in approval. "Not bad," she said, "but the lines are good. Now for the final touches." She guided me to a chair in front of the vanity mirror. I deliberately avoided my own reflection. Ivy opened a drawer and pulled out a long, soft brown wig. She expertly fitted it over my head, tucking my own short hair away. The weight of it was surprising, and strands of synthetic hair tickled my cheeks and fell over my shoulders. "Okay," she said softly. "Now look." Slowly, hesitantly, I lifted my eyes. The person staring back at me wasn't Liam. It was a girl, a nervous, wide-eyed girl with soft brown hair framing her face. The sweater and skirt created an illusion, a silhouette that was believable. My broad shoulders seemed softer, my waist more defined, my legs, encased in the sheer hose, looked smoother and more slender. It was me, but it was a version of me I had only ever seen in my imagination. A wave of dizziness hit me. This was real. This wasn't just a secret photo session in my apartment. Another person was seeing this Ivy. "How does it feel?" she asked, her voice quiet. I couldn't speak. My throat was tight with 1,000 conflicting emotions. There was terror. Of course, the fear of being seen, of being judged. The fear that this was all some kind of massive mistake. But underneath the fear, there was a spark, a bright, warm spark of recognition. It was like looking at a reflection of my own soul. A part of me that had been locked away and was finally, tentatively, stepping into the light. It was exhilarating. "It's weird," I finally whispered, my voice hoarse. Ivy reached for a tube of lip gloss on the vanity. "We're not done." She uncapped it and gently applied a thin, shiny layer to my lips. The applicator was cool, the gloss slightly sticky and sweet-smelling. There. A little bit of color. That small act, that simple touch of makeup, was somehow the most transformative part of all. It was a final, definitive line crossed. I stared at the girl in the mirror, at her glossy lips and her frightened, hopeful eyes. I saw the deep-seated conflict warring within her, the desperate fear of being discovered, and the even more desperate desire to be seen, to be accepted, just like this, to be acknowledged as the girl in the mirror. Ivy was watching me, not my reflection, but me. She wasn't just looking at the clothes or the wig. Her sharp, green eyes were fixed on my face, and I had the unnerving feeling that she wasn't just looking at me. She was reading me. She was reading every ounce of fear, every flicker of joy, every bit of the chaotic storm that was raging inside my heart. And she was still smiling that same knowing, mischievous smile. A new identity emerges. I spent the next hour in a daze, sitting in front of Ivy's mirror while she worked. She moved with a practiced ease, opening palettes and uncapping bottles, her touch light and confident. She wasn't just putting makeup on me, she was teaching me. "See," she said, holding a small brush, "you have good cheekbones, but they're very angular. We just want to soften them. A little bit of blush, right on the apples of the cheeks. It gives you a healthier, more feminine glow." She dusted a peachy pink powder onto my cheeks. The sensation was ticklish, the effect subtle but immediate. The face in the mirror looked warmer, less severe. She showed me how to apply a thin line of brown eyeliner to make my eyes look bigger, a coat of mascara to lengthen my lashes, and how to fill in my eyebrows to give them a softer, more arched shape. Every step was a revelation, another layer of Liam being peeled away, another feature of this new person being brought into focus. When she was done, she took a step back and surveyed her work. "Okay, now for the real test." "Real test?" I asked, my voice still feeling foreign. It sounded higher-pitched, softer. Maybe it was just my imagination. "You can't learn to be a girl just by sitting in a back room," Ivy said, pulling the sheet off another clothing rack. "You have to go out. You have to exist in the world. I'm giving you one real-world test day." My stomach dropped. Outside like where people can see me. That's generally where people are," she quipped, pulling out a dress. It was beautiful. A simple faye and sleeveless dress in a soft pastel blue, made of a light, floaty material. It had a fitted bodice and a skirt that looked like it would move beautifully. "This will be perfect. It's innocent, unassuming, the kind of thing that doesn't draw too much attention but still looks put together." She also handed me something else. It was a strange, elasticated garment, like a corset but shorter and made of a modern, stretchy fabric. "A waist cincher," she explained, seeing my confused look. "It'll just help smooth things out and give you a more defined waistline. And these," she produced a pair of silicone breast forms. They were heavy, teardrop-shaped, and felt disconcertingly lifelike. My face flushed a deep, burning red. I don't know if I can—" "You wanted to know what it feels like," Ivy interrupted gently. "This is part of it, the weight, the shape, the way your clothes hang differently. It's all part of the experience." I went back behind the changing screen, my hands trembling again. The waist cincher was tight, and I had to suck in my breath to hook it closed. The instant I did, I felt it. It pressed in on my midsection, forcing me to stand up straighter. It wasn't painful, but it was a constant, undeniable pressure, a reminder that my body was being shaped into something new. Placing the silicone forms inside the simple bra Ivy had given me was the strangest moment yet. They were heavy. Just as she'd said, I adjusted them until they sat correctly, and then I pulled the pastel blue dress on over everything. When I zipped it up, I gasped. The reflection in the small mirror behind the screen was shocking. The cincher had carved out a waist, and the breast forms filled out the bodice of the dress, creating a soft, believable curve. I looked like a girl, a real one. I stepped out, my movements tentative. Ivy was holding a pair of low-heeled sandals. "Just 5 centimeters, she said. "A training heel." Putting them on was like learning to walk all over again. My balance was off, and I had to put a hand on the wall to steady myself. Ivy came over and took my arm. "Small steps," she coached, "heel, then toe. Don't lock your knees, let your hips move naturally." Let my hips move naturally. They were swaying with every awkward step, a motion I had absolutely no control over. It was mortifying. Each step I took, I could feel the slight weight of the silicone form shifting against the thin fabric of the dress, a constant, blush-inducing reminder of my new anatomy. Ivy braided the long brown wig into a loose, casual style that looked like something a high school girl would wear. She finished it all with a light spritz of perfume. It was a fresh, clean scent, like rain and white flowers. The smell surrounded me, creating a fragrant bubble that felt completely alien. I was inhabiting someone else's skin, someone else's scent, someone else's body. "Ready?" Ivy asked, her eyes sparkling. I was anything but ready. I was terrified, but I nodded anyway. Walking out of the shop and onto the street was one of the most surreal experiences of my life. The afternoon sun was bright, the air was warm, and the world looked exactly the same as it had 2 hours ago. But I was different. I was hyper-aware of everything, the feeling of the slight breeze on my bare legs, something I'd never experienced wearing jeans my whole life, the unfamiliar clacking sound my sandals made on the sidewalk, the way the skirt of my dress floated around my knees as I walked. Most of all, I was aware of the people. Every person who walked past felt like a judge and jury. I was convinced they were all staring, that they could see right through my disguise. I kept my head down, my eyes fixed on the pavement in front of me, trying to concentrate on just walking. "Head up," Ivy said, her voice firm but low beside me. "Look straight ahead. You look like you just robbed a bank. Act like you belong here." I forced myself to lift my chin. People were walking by, chatting on their phones, laughing with friends. They weren't staring. A few people glanced my way, their eyes sliding over me with the same casual indifference they gave everyone else. They saw a girl in a blue dress, and they looked away. They weren't seeing Liam. They were seeing her. We walked toward the university campus, the most crowded place I could possibly imagine. My heart was trying to beat its way out of my chest. This was insane. What if I saw someone I knew? "We're just going to the coffee shop on the corner," Ivy said, seeming to read my mind. "It's always busy. We'll blend right in." As we approached the door to the daily grind, a guy who looked like he was on the football team was walking out. He saw us coming, and he stopped, holding the heavy glass door open for us. He smiled, a typical friendly campus smile. "After you," he said, his eyes meeting mine for a brief second. I froze. He was talking to me, not to Ivy, to me. Ivy gave me a gentle nudge from behind. "Go on," she whispered. I mumbled a thank you, my voice barely audible, and hurried inside. My face was on fire. I could feel the blood rushing to my cheeks. I found an empty table in the corner and sank into a chair, my legs feeling like jelly. Ivy sat down across from me, a triumphant smirk on her face. "See, that wasn't so hard." He held the door. I stammered. "Guys do that for girls sometimes," she said simply. "Welcome to the other side." I couldn't process it. My whole life, I'd been the one to hold doors open. I'd been a ghost, an invisible background character. But in that moment, for that one football player, I was a girl. I was visible. I was someone to be polite to, someone to notice. The feeling was a dizzying cocktail of shock, embarrassment, and a strange, thrilling sense of validation. This was the first time in my life I had ever been treated like a girl, and a part of me, a part I didn't even know existed until now, was starting to crave it. It was like a drug, a sudden unexpected high that I was already becoming addicted to. Ivy went to order us drinks, leaving me alone at the table. I risked a glance around the coffee shop. It was full of students, hunched over laptops and textbooks. No one was paying any attention to me. I was just another girl studying for finals. I looked down at my hands, resting on the table. They looked smaller, more delicate than I remembered. I watched the way the light caught the pastel blue fabric of my dress. It was all so normal, yet so profoundly strange. When Ivy came back with 2 iced lattes, she slid one across to me. "So," she said, taking a sip of hers, "what do you think?" "I think I'm going to have a heart attack," I said, my voice shaking. She laughed. "You're doing great. You look a little scared, but mostly, you just look like a girl on a coffee date." A coffee date. The words hung in the air. Was that what this was? I looked at Ivy, at her sharp eyes and her confident smile. I had no idea who she was or why she was doing this, but in that moment, I was incredibly grateful. She had unlocked a door for me that I never thought I'd even be able to touch. We sat there for almost an hour, just talking. She asked me about my design classes, and for the first time, I talked about my passion for women's fashion without fear or shame. I told her about my secret sketches in File 302, and she listened intently, asking smart questions about fabrics and silhouettes. It was the most honest conversation I'd ever had. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the campus, Ivy glanced at her watch. "Time's up. The experiment is over." A pang of disappointment hit me, sharp and unexpected. I didn't want it to be over. I wanted to stay in this skin, in this world where guys held doors open and I could talk about dress designs without feeling like a freak. The walk back to her shop was different. I was less scared, more confident. I held my head a little higher, my steps a little surer. I was starting to get the hang of the low heels. A few times, I even caught my own reflection in a shop window. Each time, it was a small shock, followed by a quiet thrill. That was me. That girl was me. Back in the safety of her workshop, the transformation back to Liam felt like a betrayal. Taking off the dress felt like shedding a skin that had already started to fit. Wiping off the makeup felt like erasing a masterpiece. When I finally stood there again in my old jeans and t-shirt, my short hair free from the wig, I felt plain, drab, incomplete. The magic was gone. I looked at my reflection in the vanity mirror. It was Liam's face again, but it looked different now. I knew what it could look like. I knew the girl who was hiding just beneath the surface, and I missed her. I missed her desperately. Ivy was watching me, her expression serious again. She leaned against her workbench, arms crossed. "So you got your taste. You got to live it for a day." "Yeah," I said, my voice low. "I did." She walked over to a small desk in the corner and picked up a plain manila envelope. She placed it on the desk in front of me. It landed with a soft, final thud. "That was the free sample," she said, her voice dropping. taking on a conspiratorial tone. Now we talk business. Nothing is free. I stared at the manila envelope sitting on the desk between us. It looked ordinary, but in the charged atmosphere of Ivy's workshop, it felt like a bomb. The free sample, she'd called it. The implication was clear: the full product would come at a price. Business? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What are you talking about? Open it, she said simply. My hands trembled as I picked up the envelope. It wasn't sealed. I lifted the flap and slid out a single sheet of paper. It wasn't just paper. It was thick, high-quality cardstock, and it was printed like a formal contract. At the top, in an elegant, stylized font, were the words Project Chimera, a proposal. I scanned the text below. It was filled with formal, almost legalistic language, but the core of the offer was terrifyingly clear. It read, I, the undersigned service provider, Ivy, possess the means and methods to facilitate a complete and total somatic and psychological transition for the client, Liam. This is not an illusion. This is a physical transformation into a biological female form. In exchange for this service, the client agrees to serve as a special assistant to the provider for a period of 30 consecutive days, fulfilling all duties as required. My blood ran cold. Physical transformation, biological female. I looked up at her, my mind reeling. What is this? Is this a joke are you talking about? Like surgery hormones? Ivy shook her head, a small, mysterious smile playing on her lips. Surgery is messy, hormones are slow, my methods are more direct, more efficient. She tapped a finger on the contract. I can make you into the girl you see in the mirror, not with makeup and clothes, but for real. Your body, your voice, everything. But nothing is free. Liam? Special assistant, I asked, the words feeling strange in my mouth. What does that even mean? What kind of duties? That's on a need-to-know basis, she said smoothly, her eyes glinting. Let's just say I have projects that require a certain delicate touch and a unique perspective. This was insane. I was a design student. She was a computer technician who ran a bizarre little shop. But the way she spoke, the confidence in her eyes, the very existence of this impossible contract, it all pointed to something much bigger, much stranger. Who was she? How could she possibly know so much about my deepest, most secret desire? The desire I had barely even admitted to myself in the privacy of my own journal. Why, I asked, the question bursting out of me. Why me? Why are you doing this? Because your file was interesting, she said, her voice softening slightly. It's rare to find a desire that pure, that desperate. You don't just want to dress up, Liam. You want to be. Most people are too scared to even admit that to themselves, let alone write it down. You've already done the hard part. She leaned forward, her green eyes locking onto mine. The only question left is, weren't you the one who wanted to step out of your boundaries? This is your chance, a real chance. My head was spinning. A part of me, the rational part, was screaming that this was crazy, that I should tear up the contract, grab my hard drive, and run as far away from this strange, mesmerizing girl as I could. But another part of me, that part was captivated. The memory of the past few hours was still so vivid, the feeling of the dress against my skin, the sound of my heels on the pavement, the simple, validating moment of a stranger holding a door for me. It was a taste of a life I had only ever dreamed of. Ivy was offering me the whole thing, a permanent transformation. The price was 30 days of my life, serving as her mysterious assistant. It was a deal with a devil I didn't know, for a prize I desperately wanted. As if sensing my hesitation, Ivy stood up. You're not ready to decide yet, she said. I get it. It's a lot to take in. You need more data. She walked over to another clothing rack, this one holding darker, more sophisticated garments. Let's try one more upgrade. The girl you were today was sweet, innocent, a student. Let's see what else is in there. She pulled out an outfit that made my breath catch in my throat. It was a black, high-necked bodysuit made of a sleek, compressive material, and a matching black pencil skirt that looked like it was tailored to perfection. The person you were today was hiding, Ivy said, her voice low and intense. She was trying to blend in. This is for someone who wants to be seen. Before I could protest, She had me back behind the changing screen. The bodysuit was a struggle to get into. It was even tighter than the waist cincher. A full-body compression garment that smoothed and sculpted every line of my torso. It felt like a second skin, a powerful restrictive armor. When I pulled on the pencil skirt, the effect was dramatic. It hugged my hips and tapered down to my knees, forcing me to take smaller, more deliberate steps. The combination created a curve, an hourglass figure that was undeniably, powerfully feminine. When I stepped out, Ivy was waiting with a different wig. This one was longer, a rich dark brown that fell in soft waves to the middle of my back. She sat me down at the vanity again. This time, the makeup was bolder. She used a darker shade of blush to contour my cheeks, making them look higher and more defined. She drew a sharp, clean line of black liquid eyeliner along my upper lashes, ending in a subtle wing. The effect was immediate, making my eyes look more almond-shaped and mysterious. A deep berry-colored lipstick completed the look. I stared at the reflection and I felt a genuine shock. The girl from this afternoon was gone. In her place was a woman. She looked older, more confident, more dangerous. She looked like she knew exactly who she was and what she wanted. There was almost no trace of Liam left in her face. "Now stand up," Ivy commanded. I stood, my movements constrained by the tight skirt. I felt the bodysuit with every breath I took. It held me in, shaping my posture, making me feel taller, more poised. I walked over to the full-length mirror, my steps careful. I looked at the woman in the reflection. I saw the sleek black of her clothes, the dramatic curve of her hip, the sophisticated cascade of her hair. And for the first time, a name popped into my head. Not Liam, not just the girl. Leah. Her name was Leah. She was beautiful and poised and everything I wasn't. I lifted a hand to my chest, feeling the compressive fabric of the bodysuit, feeling the way it created the illusion of a feminine torso. I could feel my own heart beating wildly beneath it all. Leah was staring back at me from the mirror, and she was trembling. Not from fear this time, but from the sheer, overwhelming power of her own body, of her own reflection. She was trembling with possibility. I was so lost in the mirror that I didn't notice Ivy had come to stand beside me. So she whispered, her voice right next to my ear. "Do you see it now? This isn't just a costume, Liam. This is you, unlocked." I couldn't tear my eyes away from Leah. I saw her, and for the first time, I felt like I was truly seeing myself. The conflict inside me wasn't a war anymore. It was a surrender. The rational part of my brain had gone silent, drowned out by the thunderous beat of my heart and the undeniable truth in the mirror. I turned to face Ivy, my eyes wide with a terrifying resolve. The contract was still on the desk. 30 days. I knew what my answer had to be. From disguise to reality. The next morning, I moved into Ivy's apartment. It was a small loft space above her shop, filled with the same eclectic mix of technology and artistry. I arrived with a single backpack containing a few changes of my old clothes, which felt like artifacts from a past life. The contract sat on the kitchen counter, signed in my shaky handwriting. My 30 days had begun. Days 1 to 7, a new way of being. The first week was a boot camp in femininity. Ivy was a relentless, if patient, instructor. My life as Liam was systematically dismantled and replaced with the life of Leah. It started with movement. "Stop walking like you're carrying a refrigerator," she told me on the first day, watching me clomp around the apartment in a pair of practice heels. "Your center of gravity is different now. Think light, think fluid." We spent hours just walking back and forth across the wooden floor. She taught me to keep my back straight, my shoulders back, and my feet one in front of the other, as if I were walking on a line. She made me practice sitting, a motion I'd never given a second thought to. Cross your legs at the ankle or the knee. Never sit with your legs apart. It breaks the silhouette. She'd instruct. She showed me how to stand, how to gesture, how to pick something up from the floor without looking like a construction worker. Every movement was recalibrated, every habit broken and rebuilt. It was exhausting. My muscles ached in places I didn't know I had. Then came the makeup lessons. We moved beyond the basics she'd shown me before. I had to learn everything from scratch: how to properly prep my skin, how to choose the right foundation shade, how to blend eyeshadow, how to apply false eyelashes without gluing my eye shut. My first few attempts were disastrous. I looked like a sad clown, but Ivy was persistent, guiding my hand, correcting my technique. Lighter touch, she'd say. Makeup is about enhancement, not camouflage. By the end of the week, I could manage a simple, natural look on my own. It became a morning ritual, waking up, showering, and then sitting at the vanity to put on my face. It was like putting on a uniform, preparing myself for the role of Leah. And the clothes, every day, Ivy would have a new outfit laid out for me. Each one was a different lesson. One day, it was a cute casual outfit of high-waisted shorts and a t-shirt, teaching me about casual, everyday femininity. The next, it was a professional-looking blouse and skirt, a lesson in workplace attire. Then came a slinky, satin nightgown. I'll never forget the first time I wore that. The fabric was so light, so smooth against my skin. It felt decadent, impossibly soft. I looked at myself in the mirror, the satin draping over the silicone forms, and I felt a blush creep up my neck. I was wearing lingerie. It felt scandalous and deeply, secretly thrilling. My entire wardrobe was being replaced. The jeans and hoodies I'd lived in were packed away. My closet was now filled with skirts, dresses, soft sweaters, and delicate underthings. Psychologically, that first week was a roller coaster. I swung between moments of sheer panic and embarrassment to flashes of profound joy. Every time I stumbled in my heels or smudged my eyeliner, I felt like a fraud, a boy playing a pathetic game of dress-up. But then there were moments when I'd catch my reflection and see Leah looking back. Moments when I'd execute a turn perfectly or apply my lipstick in a clean, sharp line, and I'd feel a surge of pride. I wasn't just wearing a costume anymore. I was learning a new language, the language of being a woman. I was clumsy and hesitant, but I was starting to form my first words. I was starting to get used to it, and more than that, I was starting to like it. Days 8 to 14, the body in flux. On the morning of the 8th day, things changed. Ivy handed me a small, unmarked vial filled with a clear, slightly viscous liquid. "What's this?" I asked, eyeing it suspiciously. "Liquid hormone," she said, her tone matter-of-fact. "Drink it." "Is that safe?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "What's in it?" "It's my own formulation," she replied, offering no further explanation. "It will accelerate the process. It's part of the deal. Trust me." Trust her. I had signed a contract to have my entire biology rewritten by a mysterious computer technician. I was already miles past the point of rational decision-making. With a deep breath, I drank the liquid. It was tasteless, odorless. I felt nothing. For 2 days, nothing happened. I started to think it was a placebo, another one of Ivy's psychological games. Then, on the 10th day, I noticed it. I was washing my face, and my skin, it felt different, softer. The slight roughness on my jawline was gone. It felt smooth, like polished stone. I looked closer in the mirror. The angles of my face seemed less sharp. My jaw seemed a little narrower, my cheeks a little fuller. Was I imagining it? I wasn't. Over the next few days, the changes became undeniable. My body hair started to thin, becoming finer and lighter. Aches and pains settled deep in my hips. A strange, growing pressure that Ivy explained was my pelvic girdle subtly shifting. The most startling change was the fat redistribution. It felt like my body was being sculpted by an invisible hand. The lean muscle in my arms and shoulders began to soften, and I could see a new gentle curve developing on my hips and thighs. My voice changed, too. It happened so gradually I almost didn't notice it at first. But one afternoon, I was practicing speaking, reading from a book aloud as Ivy had instructed, and I realized the sound was different. The slight rasp was gone. My pitch had naturally lifted by a few tones, settling into a higher, clearer register without me having to force it. It was both terrifying and miraculous. I would wake up each morning and rush to the mirror, searching for the new subtle alterations. It was like watching puberty in fast forward. But in reverse, Liam was fading, melting away, and Leah was emerging, not as a disguise, but as a physical reality. I felt a growing sense of panic. This was real. This was permanent. There was no going back. But that panic was always overshadowed by a powerful, overwhelming sense of rightness. This was what I wanted. I didn't want to go back. The pivotal moment happened on the 14th night. It was late, and Ivy was asleep. I couldn't sleep. My body felt strange, buzzing with a low-level energy. I got up and put on the satin nightgown, the first piece of Leah's clothing I had truly loved. I walked over to the full-length mirror, in the soft moonlight filtering through the loft window. My new silhouette was undeniable. The subtle curve of my hips, the softness of my shoulders. The changes were real. I ran my hand down my side, over my hip and down my thigh. The skin was impossibly soft, completely smooth. As the hem of the nightgown slid over my thigh, a jolt went through me. A sensation so new, so alien, so intensely pleasurable that my knees went weak. It wasn't sexual, not in the way I'd understood it before. It was a purely sensory experience, a sudden, shocking awareness of my own skin. I stumbled back and fell onto my bed, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My body wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to Leah, and she was feeling things Liam could never have imagined. I lay there for a long time, my hand resting on my hip, feeling the new curve of it through the thin satin. The fear was gone. In its place was a profound, earth-shattering sense of wonder. Days 1523. Interacting with the world. "It's time to take Leah out again," Ivy announced on the 15th day. "But this time, it's different. No more faking it. You're not in disguise anymore. You just are." This phase was about social integration. It started with a shopping trip, not for a costume, but for a real wardrobe. We went to the mall, and for the first time, I walked into the women's section of a department store not as a nervous interloper, but as a customer. "Go on," Ivy urged. "Find something you like." It was overwhelming, the racks and racks of clothes, the endless possibilities. I tentatively picked out a few things: a soft floral sundress, a pair of well-fitting jeans designed for a woman's body, a cute off-the-shoulder top. The most terrifying part was the fitting room. I had to walk up to a female sales associate and ask for a room. She smiled and pointed me toward the stalls without a second glance. Inside the fitting room, I tried on the jeans. They slid over my newly curved hips and hugged my thighs in a way men's jeans never could. They fit perfectly. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a girl in a pair of jeans. It was that simple, that profound. I bought them, along with the dress and the top, using my own credit card with my own name, Liam, on it. Felt like the last vestige of a forgotten life. A few days later, Ivy took me to meet her friends. We went to a trendy little cafe downtown. I was a nervous wreck. These people knew Ivy. What if they could tell? "Just be yourself," Ivy had said. "Your new self." Her friends were a cool, artsy crowd. A musician named Maya and a graphic designer named Ben. Ivy introduced me simply. "This is Leah." They just accepted it. They smiled, said hello, and started talking. Ben, the graphic designer, was friendly and engaging. He asked me about my own design work, and we geeked out about software and aesthetic theory for 20 minutes. He looked me in the eye when he spoke. He laughed at my jokes. He treated me like a person. More than that, he treated me like an interesting, attractive woman. At one point, he mentioned a gallery opening and said, "You should come with us. I'd love to get your take on it. Can I get your number?" I felt my cheeks flush with heat. A guy was asking for my number. My number. I stammered out the digits, my fingers fumbling with my phone. He texted me right away so I would have his number. His name popped up on my screen, Ben. I stared at it, my heart doing a wild tap dance in my chest. I felt seen. I felt normal. The interactions with Ivy were changing, too. The dynamic was shifting from instructor and student to something more like friends or roommates. We'd cook dinner together, watch movies. The physical barrier between us was dissolving. One evening, we were crossing a busy street, and a car came around the corner a little too fast. Without thinking, Ivy reached out and put her hand on the small of my back to guide me forward, pulling me closer to her. The touch was electric. It wasn't a clinical, instructional touch like before. It was casual, instinctive, protective. Her hand was warm against my back, and I froze for a second, my face burning. The brief, simple contact sent a jolt straight through me. A spark of something I didn't dare put a name to. I was hyper-aware of her presence, of the scent of jasmine that always clung to her, of the easy confidence in her every move. My feelings for my strange, mysterious savior were becoming complicated. Days 24 for 30. The final polish. The last week of the transformation was about refinement. The physical changes had settled. The liquid hormone had done its work. The most shocking development was my chest. The silicone forms had been discarded days ago. In their place, small but definite breasts had grown. They were tender and real, my own. I now had a figure that could fill out a bodycon dress without any padding or corsetry. My hips had settled into their final, feminine curve. My body felt lighter, more graceful. My movements were fluid and natural, no longer a conscious effort. My face was the most remarkable change. I would stare at it in the mirror for hours. It was Leah's face now. The last traces of Liam's angular features had softened into a delicate, heart-shaped face that I was starting to recognize as my own. I looked like a girl of 19 or 20. There was no trace of the boy I had been. He was gone, a ghost, a memory. There was only Leah. On the 30th day, I woke up feeling a strange sense of finality. The deal was done. My 30 days were over. I spent the morning in a quiet, reflective mood. I put on a simple white dress, one I had bought on our shopping trip. I did my makeup carefully, not as a task, but as a meditation. I looked at myself in the mirror. There was no fear, no confusion, just a quiet sense of peace. For the first time, the person in the mirror and the person in my head were the same. Ivy found me standing by the window looking out at the city. "It's done," she said softly. "The 30 days are over." I nodded, unable to speak. "My end of the bargain is complete," she continued. "You've been an excellent assistant." I realized then that the duties had been my own transformation. My project had been myself. She came to stand next to me. "There's one last place I need to take you," she said. "I need to show you the truth." The final confession. Ivy led me not to her car, but to a plain-looking service door at the back of her shop. I'd never seen her use it before. She unlocked it, revealing a clean, well-lit staircase leading down. The air that wafted up was cool and sterile, a stark contrast to the fragrant chaos of her workshop. "Where are we going?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Down the rabbit hole," she replied with a wry smile, and led the way. The staircase opened into a long, white corridor that looked like it belonged in a high-tech laboratory. The walls were lined with sleek, minimalist doors, each with a small digital panel next to it. It was silent, except for the low hum of ventilation. This was no quirky loft. This was a serious, well-funded operation. Ivy led me to a set of large double doors at the end of the hall. She placed her palm on a scanner, and the doors hissed open. The room inside took my breath away. It was a massive open-plan space that looked like a cross between a design studio, a medical facility, and a boutique. There were workstations with advanced computer setups, comfortable lounge areas where people were talking quietly, and private consultation rooms with frosted glass walls. In one corner, there was a state-of-the-art biochemistry lab. In another, a sophisticated workshop that looked equipped to create anything from custom prosthetics to intricate fabrics. And there were people, a handful of them, moving with quiet purpose. I saw a young man being fitted for what looked like a hyper-realistic prosthetic arm. I saw two women in deep conversation with a counselor in one of the glass rooms. Everyone here seemed to be in some state of transition, of becoming... "What is this place?" I breathed, completely in awe. "Welcome to the Chimera Project," Ivy said, her voice filled with a quiet pride. She gestured around the room. "This is my real work, my real shop." She explained that her street-level tech and trinket store was just a front, a way for her to find people like me. "We specialize in identity reconstruction," she said. "Paul, we help people who feel trapped, people who were born in the wrong body, or who have aspirations they can't achieve because of their physical form, soldiers who have lost limbs, artists who need a different kind of vessel for their work, and people with a profound sense of gender dysphoria who can't or won't go through the slow, painful, and often imperfect public medical system." My mind was reeling, trying to connect the dots. "So the liquid..." "Bio-nanotechnology," she said simply, "tailored to your specific DNA. It rewrites your genetic expression at a cellular level. It's not magic, Leah, it's just very, very advanced science. It was all too much to take in. This wasn't some strange, mystical power she possessed. It was a secret organization, a futuristic clinic dedicated to helping people become who they were always meant to be. But why me? I asked again. The question more urgent than ever. How did you know? I'm a good judge of character, she said, and your data footprint was loud. Your search history, the forums you visited, the art you were drawn to. And then, File 302. It was the most perfect psychological profile I could have asked for. It was a cry for help, written in code. She turned to face me, her green eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. I want to be very clear about something. Leah, she said, her voice low and earnest. I didn't turn you into someone else. I didn't create a new person. All I did was help you tear down the walls. I just removed the shell you built around yourself. The one society helped you build. The girl you are now. She was in there the whole time. I just gave her the key. She led me to a large, perfectly clear mirror hanging on one of the walls. It was the same kind of mirror from her workshop, but in this clean, bright room, the reflection was flawless. I stood before it. Leah stared back at me. Not a costume, not an illusion. A living, breathing young woman. Her brown hair cascaded over the shoulders of her white dress. Her eyes, my eyes, were clear and bright. Her body was soft and curved in all the right places. It was the body I had sketched in notebooks, the body I had dreamed of in my darkest, most secret moments. It felt right. It felt like home. Tears began to well up in my eyes, blurring the reflection. They weren't tears of sadness or fear. They were tears of relief. A lifetime of confusion and longing and feeling wrong in my own skin was washing away. For the first time in my life, the person on the outside finally matched the person on the inside. I was whole. I cried silently, my shoulders shaking. Ivy stood beside me, not touching me, just giving me the space to feel it. After a few minutes, my tears subsided. I took a deep, shuddering breath and looked at my reflection again, this time with a watery smile. She was beautiful. Ivy finally spoke, her voice gentle. The contract is fulfilled. The process is stable and permanent, but it's also reversible. We can change you back. It would take another 30 days, another formulation. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. She was giving me a choice, the final choice. Do you want to go back to being Liam? She asked, her gaze steady and unwavering. Or do you want to become Leah completely? She held up 2 vials. One looked identical to the liquid I'd been drinking. The other was a slightly different color, the way forward or the way back. I just need one answer. The choice of the girl in the mirror. The choice hung in the air, a silent monumental question. Liam or Leah, the past or the future, the shell or the soul. I looked at my reflection one last time. I saw Leah, her eyes still shimmering with tears, but shining with a newfound strength. I thought about Liam, the quiet, lonely boy who hid in his apartment, sketching dreams he never thought would come true. He felt like a stranger to me now, a character from a book I'd read a long time ago. He was a part of my story, the foundation upon which Leah was built. But he wasn't me, not anymore. I turned away from the mirror to face Ivy. The answer was so clear, so simple, it felt like the only truth I had ever known. My hand was trembling, but my voice, when it came out, was steady, clear. I want to live, I said, my voice full of a conviction I had never felt before. As Leah. A slow smile spread across Ivy's face. It wasn't her usual mischievous smirk. This was different. It was a smile of genuine warmth, of satisfaction, tinged with a deep, disarming tenderness. The kind of smile you give someone when they've finally found their way home. Welcome to yourself, Leah, she said softly. The story doesn't end there. Of course, it was just the beginning. My old life as Liam was quietly erased. Ivy, with her considerable resources, fabricated a new history for me. Birth certificates, school records, a social security number for Leah Anderson. Liam became a ghost, a student who simply transferred to another university and faded away. Leah, on the other hand, was just beginning. My relationship with Ivy blossomed into something I never could have predicted. She became my mentor, my confidant, my best friend. She helped me navigate the thousand little challenges and joys of being a woman in the world, learning how to deal with unwanted attention, the solidarity of a women's restroom, the simple pleasure of a girls' night in. There was a current between us, an unspoken tension that was both thrilling and terrifying. That moment she had put her hand on my back to guide me across the street, I felt that spark every time she was near. Where that would lead, I didn't know, but it was a future filled with a possibility I was eager to explore. I started living, truly living. I went on that gallery date with Ben. It was sweet and a little awkward, and it ended with a polite hug. It was my first real date as myself, and it was a wonderful, nerve-wracking experience. I enrolled in new design classes under my new name, no longer afraid to showcase my passion for feminine aesthetics. My designs were better, more authentic, now that they were coming from a place of genuine self-expression. Life as a woman wasn't a fantasy, it was real. It came with its own set of challenges, fears, and frustrations, but it was my reality. It was true. Every morning, I wake up and look in the mirror, and every morning, for a fleeting second, I remember that first shocking moment. Wait a minute, that's not my face. But now I smile because it is my face. It finally is. My name is Leah, and this is my story.